We're ready to go. All right, well, welcome to James and I, this is our final presentation of the day. We've had a busy week here, so thanks for everyone for joining us. And we're going to talk about lean construction and collaboration from the owner's perspective today. This really picks up on our conversation from last year. So if anyone was there last year, James and I have talked about this probably for the last few years at different conferences around the country, and just think it's important to continue to reiterate that having a strong owner project manager in the mix especially during lean construction is extremely important. So we're going to talk about a couple big fundamental ideas when we go through that today. So just a real quick introduction. I'm shown here, John Zahara. I'm Vice President with Integrated Facilities Solutions. We're an owner's representative or program manager out of Chicago area. We represent a very large healthcare organization in Chicago, doing about 95% of our work in the healthcare market. So this is something that I live and breathe every day as a project manager, owner's representative.
All right, and I am John's co-host today. My name is James Kpis, and I'm an executive director for health design and construction at the University of California, San Francisco. So lead a team that does a lot of renovation work, mostly in occupied healthcare facilities. But really, this presentation is more of a passion project. So if you heard the earlier stuff, I'm in a world now where we do a lot of non-collaborative delivery, and we're changing that. So this presentation represents kind of our view of the ideal world. If you have no limitations, how can projects be delivered? So take it away, John.
Well, let's go through kind of the big ideas that we're going to talk about. So what are the issues or challenges that face owners during project delivery, especially in a lean project world? Like James said, it's not something he gets to do every single day. It's not something I do every day, but it's something that he and I have collaborated on for really the last almost 7 years now since we've known each other, about this idea of moving the process forward, especially for owners. So what are those issues or challenges that face owners on our projects? We're going to talk about culture and the idea of culture driven by the owner. So having a strong owner project manager in the mix is important to drive that culture that you are expecting. And then what are we going to do once we get into the idea of project execution? How are we going to execute our projects after we've looked at our challenges, looked at our issues, created a culture, and then how are we going to execute on this project? So James is going to take us through that first part about kind of the issues and challenges that we're facing as owners.
Okay, so this is really to frame. So if you're an owner, most likely these things will match your world as well. If you're not, if you're a designer, builder, financier, or other part of the supply chain, we just wanted to set the stage a little bit that owners, in general, owners don't have enough capital to do all of the projects. So it's a supply-demand thing. If we had more money, we would build more projects. We're just going through our fiscal year capital approval process right now, and about a third of the projects that we want to do can't be funded purely because we don't have enough money to do all of them. And so a goal for owners is, if you can drive down the cost of your projects, you're not going to spend less money. You're going to spend the same amount of money. You're just going to do more projects. And so to the industry out there, we're going to spend the money. This is not about taking jobs away or work away. It's about getting more with those dollars. And our healthcare missions, we're talking about healthcare mostly, is we need to deliver more services to the patients that we serve. So we need to continue to expand capacity. And part of that expansion of capacity adds cost to the system, which adds cost to the care that we deliver. So in order to lower the cost of the care we need to be able to bring on capacity at a lower marginal cost. So we're spending all the time thinking about that. And so as big healthcare systems, we're thinking about how can we leverage our capital and buying power. So what systems can we use as the owner to change the delivery of capital projects? And so we wanted to set the stage of how we're thinking about these issues. So some of the challenges or obstacles in talking about different delivery models is, as you know, working with healthcare owners, we change our mind a lot. And that's because projects take a long time generally, and imaging equipment updates every 18 months. We don't want to open a hospital that is obsolete before it even opens. So what that means is we need the ability in our models to be able to change the scope as the project is going along. We need to build continuous improvement into our projects. So as we're learning from our healthcare operations, we're tweaking our projects. And then just the straight reality of big healthcare organizations, top-down standardization is met. There's a lot of politics and a lot of different drivers and everything. And so we have to do it in a collaborative way. You can't just force people into a system. Even though it might be cheaper, there's other factors at play. So we'd argue that a truly successful system is going to build off of these 5 big ideas of collaborating, really collaborating. So deep collaboration for all members, optimizing the whole, not the parts. So we got to optimize the overall project, the overall capital program, not say one individual scope or one individual piece. We need feedback loops in our projects. We need to manage projects as a network of commitments. So hundreds of people working together, making commitments to each other, not the traditional managing projects through contracts and allocation of risk and transfer of risk. Because what's really happening is there's a lot of people that are collaborating together. And if we look at it that way, then we need to increase the relatedness. We need to build better teams and a better culture. Go ahead, John. As we go into this next section, these are just questions. We'll throw these out there and you can answer them for yourselves. So as owners, how do we know we're spending our money in the most valuable way? How could a shift from traditional silos improve outcomes? And then what role does the owner play? So I know a lot of owners are saying, I just wish my teams would do A, B, and C, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. So we challenge, what role can the owner play? And what role does the owner actually have to play if you want different outcomes on projects?
Yeah, I think it's a great kind of conversation about the role of the owner in just the contractor design team that we're collaborating with also needs to give the owner a roadmap on what things are priorities. James and I in our roles have many things that we're doing outside the capacity potentially of that particular construction project. And so if we have our team focused on one project or a set of projects, we may have things that are going on that are in planning and early schematic design that are well before we get a team. We need help in prioritizing our day too, with what are the most important things that we need right now. And I think that's an important thing that, we got to talk about. We like throwing these slides in here about the questions. These are just things to ponder as we move through. So I'm talking about culture now. If we're driving, and it's culture really from our perspective, we want culture driven from the owner and driven down from the owner to the team. But not just in a heavy-handed way. We ultimately lay this out as a leader, but we're kind of leading them from the team from behind. We're not out there. We're there to make decisions. We're there to help drive this culture, but we're not the only one in the room that's making the decision or going to help create this team and move it forward. So one thing I've talked about at the different presentations I've done this week is this idea of validation. And early, when we get a lean project delivery, we talk about validation. And I like this graphic that, as we've always talked about scope, schedule, and budget as the things that really support our business case. But we really need to concentrate on adding quality as a fourth leg to that stool, because that's where we're going to get that value question that was just brought up about where can we spend our dollars most valuably. If we're doing it in a way that is wasteful and not in building in what the client really wants, we're not putting quality at the forefront. We're putting some kind of showy thing at the forefront, and that's costing us a lot of money, potentially wasting downstream projects. So we need to make sure quality is built in as a support to this business case, I talked yesterday about the idea of validation, why validation period is so important, especially in a lean process. And that's why lean project delivery works so well, is because we have this validation period up front. Master planning as we've all seen that waterfall type schedule, but really the culture that we're trying to build is accountability to all team levels. So on the right-hand side of the picture, we have our last plan or pull plan boards. We're looking at the team putting their own promises. James just talked about a network of promises. The pull plan board is where we set that stage for accountability. So that's, again, a culture drive between, we need the waterfall schedule, but let's take it and break it down into daily activities that really make sense, and let's make those team members accountable. And we as owner or project managers can drive that accountability to them and call them out when people aren't delivering. We're also going to be on that board. James and I are on that board all the time as the roadblock potentially, or the sticky note that isn't getting done because we have to make a decision. So we're on that board just like everybody else is. So we're not above the fray when it comes to doing our job. I think another really interesting point, and it's something that James had talked about the other day, was the idea of fabrication and designing for fabrication and not just for intent. Our old drawing style was designed, here's the intent of what we're trying to do. But as we use 3D modeling, we use prefabrication, we need to design with fabrication in mind. How do we do that well? Well, we bring in our collaborative partners earlier in the project process. We have our trade partners talking to our engineers and our architects about constructability. And so we're designing now for fabrication and not just for intent. That is again a culture that we have to drive as owner project managers, to say, I don't want, that reduces change orders. This reduces RFIs. This reduces a lot of the headaches and junk that we see on projects if we start to think a little differently about how we design our projects. That kind of segues into this idea of early trade partner integration and engagement. There's on the picture of the head wall, I think I showed this one other time this week, but the idea of we're designing that head wall now to fabricate that head wall in a shop rather than just putting a graphic on a drawing and pointing to it saying head wall. That's not helpful. This is way more helpful. Doing any kind of prefab we can do, even in the sense of VAV boxes within a set of ductwork. All of that stuff is valuable time that we're saving out on the job site. We both love this picture a lot about these teams yelling at each other versus the other side of the coin, which is teams collaborating. In the center of the picture there, the guy talking with his hands is one of my project managers on a project site. Again, sitting down and collaborating. Maybe we're not doing this today in this picture because we'll have masks on, but we're going to still be sitting down and collaborating together and talking about risk and how do we assign risk and how do we mitigate risk on a project. Did a whole presentation yesterday on the integrated form of agreement contract and how that actually lowers risk and mitigates risk on a project rather than raising risk. And just an example of that, I zoomed in on this particular slide because I wanted to show just this is very rudimentary spreadsheet showing what are our opportunities or risks and how are we tracking this stuff. We could do this very easily without a lot of effort and work. Again, it's up to us to drive that culture. And then what do we get? We get a big room with big ideas. We get teams collaborating at a very high level within a cluster group meeting that takes only a couple hours. We're using all the tools and mechanisms we can to gather together. James and I have talked about the challenge of building a team culture remotely, which is what we're trying to do right now. And it's difficult. Can be difficult. We don't see the big room happening in that way. We see it virtually happening. And that's where this idea of respect for people comes into play, and it's very important. This was just a sampling of something I did on a project recently where I looked at everyone's core values, all the major team members, and I looked at core value alignment. And look at what's in the middle of core value alignment. The culture we're trying to build is teamwork and respect. That is a continuum through probably all the organizations we work with and partner with. Teamwork and respect are at the forefront of basically every organization we work with. And if it's not, do we really want to work with those folks? That's the kind of culture we're trying to build. If it has to be remote, let's do a core value analysis of all the organizations and see where we align and where we don't align. And it was interesting to see that all four of these companies, we've worked with some of these companies for 2 decades. And I'd never really done that analysis to see where our core values line up. And look at what's at the center. It's just a really interesting study. So, how do we drive culture on our projects is a question that we continually ask ourselves. We're challenged with it in the idea of a virtual setting. How do we know we're making the right decisions? I think we've always stressed our project managers, making a decision is way better, even if it's wrong or has the potential to be wrong. It's better than not making a decision at all. And so we want people to be empowered to make decisions, hopefully as a group and not in a silo. And then, the last question, again, we always tie back this owner. What is the role the owner plays in building team culture? And it really starts with us being open to people's ideas. We have to be open to people's ideas. We have to listen to what they're saying. And we have to be open to collaboration. I mean, I remember the reason how I met James was I sat through a webinar that he did like 7 years ago, and I picked up the phone and called him out of the blue. And, it's been a great friendship and collaboration since then. So that does work. You have to be open to sharing and open to the conversation.
So I'll take this next piece. And so just some of the questions, I'll just give some of my answers or my thoughts here. When the owner goes out to put a team together, they're making the first stance or the first messaging to the team about, okay, here's the kind of culture we're going to have on this job. So if the owner goes out and, this actually tracks my personal career progression through design and construction. In my early career, it was almost all design, bid, build for private companies as well as public companies. So I think that's an easy delivery model for people to understand, especially if they don't work in design and construction. Once you try it on some inpatient hospitals, you quickly realize, there's a lot of drawbacks to that model. But when you go out and you procure something and you start design and you get no input from the construction, the trade partners, and then you just put it out into the world and you ask for a hard bid and you say, what I care about is the lowest price. That's how I'm going to make my selection. You're telling the team from the very first day before they even win the job what you care about. Now, if you use a best value selection model, depending on how you set up the scoring, you can either score a lot for price and you're still saying, what I really care about is the price. And what, as we all know, what you're effectively saying is, I care about the first price. I care about the starting price. I don't care about the ending price. And when you use best value and you put the team collaboration, or in private organizations, you don't have to be as structured in your selection. When I worked for a private organization, we would spend most of our time looking at the actual team that was on the project, because we didn't invite teams to present that couldn't do the job. So we knew that any of the teams invited could do the job. So then you start to look at, okay, what are the differentiators between them? All the companies are innovative. They all have great marketing teams. At the end of the day, it really came down to who's the PM, who's the estimator, who's the superintendent, and what are the pros and cons between teams. And so I think once you change your selection model, the whole point of this long rant is that when you change the selection model, the owner is making a statement when the team comes on board of how you want to play and how you want to act together. So let's go to the next slide.
Tells you right there, right? I mean, do you want to answer this question, or do you want to? We got one question in the chat right now.
Okay, give me a second.
So it says, can you give any insights on how a firm who has no previous experience with an owner, but experience with other owners in the same market, can introduce themselves and what the owner values in order to be a part of their team and culture? So this is kind of like that cold call, or, hey, I have experience over here. How can I translate it, to this?
So this is my personal advice, and people may not like it. I'll just preface that. So you got to find a way to have a conversation with the owner. If they're hard bidding, you just got to be low, right? That's
Right.
kind of the simple thing. But if there's a different type of market, what I would encourage partners to do is ask the owner and actually listen to their response. Yeah. And try very hard to not assume you know the answer, because I've been asked these questions so many times and I say, this is what's value to me. And the contractor or the firm says, oh yeah, I do all of those things. And then they go off to do something that had nothing to do with what I told them was valuable. So don't assume you know the answer. And maybe it's just semantics on language, but listen to the language that your clients are using. And if you're a trade partner, same thing. Listen to the general contractors. Listen to the language that they use when they state their values. And really think deeply. I would just say, don't assume you already know, because most likely the reason they're telling you these things is because they don't usually get it, and it's something that they're looking for.
Well, I think you had a great point about the idea of onboarding a team. I tell teams all the time when I'm interviewing them, if we have to go through an interview process, and I think this is related to this thing, is the idea of, I don't need a long company history about who you are as a firm. I've sat through an hour-long presentation of 40 minutes was spent talking about the firm's history. You're here because I already know the firm's history. So that isn't important to the client sitting in that room. What's important is what directs them to your own values. Like you were just talking about, James. Like, what are the values I have about this project? What am I prioritizing? What did I put in the RFP that talked about what are our priorities on this project? That's what we should be answering if we really want to tap into what the owner is talking about. And don't try to force yourself to talk about something you don't understand either. So if you don't understand it, if you think you're regurgitating something, that's going to come off as a bad intro to a client, to just regurgitate something that maybe you heard them say at a presentation or something like that. That's not really, you got to really make this something, your viewpoint on, and connect to them in some way, Yeah,
you mentioned RFP. I would read the RFP too, and actually respond to what's in the RFP. I'd be amazed how many packages I get that are clearly prepared by a marketing team. And I've asked contractors when they've said, why didn't we get the job? And I've asked them fairly bluntly, did anyone who works in project management actually work on this proposal? Because it doesn't appear that you read the RFP. It doesn't appear that you responded. And these are companies that I've worked with. I know they can do the job, but based on the response to the RFP, I couldn't
read the rules. They didn't read the rules. You set the expectation. The culture was I set an expectation.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing worse than being an owner and actually spending time thinking about what you want and putting it very clearly in an RFP and then getting responses that show that nobody read it, which happens more than you might think. All right, so let's keep moving here. So in the interest of time, I'd go through this quickly, but these are some of the kind of early stage questions. And I wouldn't take this graphic to say this is where these things have to happen. I would take this as you're putting a project together, and even if you're the design team and the contracting team, if you've been brought on early, these are some of the key decisions that you need to work through as a team. So you'll see one thing is that the team is onboarded early in concept design. So this is radically different than finishing construction documents and being 2 back checks in with OSHPD or whatever your permitting agency is, and then getting a construction team on board. This EMP locked in, a lot of people like to set EMP is a term for an integrated project delivery for the contract value. And there's more nuances we don't have time to cover today. But the point of this is it's locked in. It's schematic design development phase. A lot of people I know, they want to set the contract value at the end of construction documents. And my feeling is, okay, that's fine, but you don't get much contingency and there's no shared savings because most of the risk is gone. You've bid all the scopes. It's already designed. So not only is most of the risk gone, but most of the opportunity is gone too. I'd say 20% into schematic design, you're already past most of your major money saving opportunities. They're really early. Target value design. So having this after the EMP, I think you're always participating in some amount of target value design, even in the strategic need area. But this is really saying once you've locked the contract value, you've locked the scope that the team needs to deliver. And so this process is, how can we deliver the same value, but for less money? This is not value engineering is a nice way of saying a lot of times, we're just going to cut the scope and the job is going to cost less. And it's like, I know it's going to cost less because you're not providing me the same scope. Target value design is about providing the same or better value, but for less money. It is very difficult, but it's absolutely achievable, and especially with good partners. So submittals and BIM started. I would call this BIM started as this is like the fabrication. This is not the early Revit stuff that's going to be going on early in schematic design. I feel like our most successful projects are when we get permits on our shop drawings. Usually you get permits on something and then you go into a shop drawing process. In my world, because we bid everything, we bid something, we pick a team, and then we wait like 2 months for them to do shop drawings, and our fire sprinklers like are way, it's just kind of crazy to me, and I've got lots of work to do to fix that. Enough on this slide. Let's go to the next one. Cost checks. I would say more traditional delivery models have these very finite cost check models. And so they say, okay, at 100% concept development, we're going to do an estimate. At 50% schematic design, we're going to do an estimate. And if you've worked as an owner for a while, you know that the cost is always more than you have. And then you go back and you start redesigning it and you start cutting things out. And this is a ton of rework with a lean mindset. And so one piece flow, I've never said this before, but you really want your estimate to be like one piece flow. You want to be managing this estimate all the way through. And the estimate is hard for people to get this concept, but you want the estimate to actually be ahead of the design. So you want to be designing to an estimate and the traditional delivery is I'm going to do a bunch of design and then the contractor is going to take it off and estimate it. And then I'm going to do a bunch of design and take it off and estimate it. And what we're trying to do is flip this, and it works very successfully. It's not impossible. And frankly, I think to be really successful in this market, you have to do this. So it means you need strong conceptual estimating, which means you need to say, look, this is what it costs to build these types of services. These are the cost drivers for a project. And so that you focus on those cost drivers when you go into design. And I ask teams, I say, I don't want you to draw anything until you've confirmed that it's in the budget, which has a lot of people scratching their heads. Like, that's impossible, but it's not.
Right.
All right, let's go to the next one. So dashboards, this goes along with the previous slide, and the previous two slides really is, how do we aggregate all of the information that's happening on a project? So if you're on a big project and you've got multiple design packages, you've got a lot of decisions being made, you've got a lot of decisions that are they're 50% made. How do you aggregate that data so the owner can get an idea? And frankly, not just the owner, the entire project team benefits by capturing the financial status of the project, the schedule status of the project, the reliability. So here, and there's one on the PPC, which is planned percent complete, which I would argue, if you don't know what that is, you should really look at lean construction, last planner system, because I find the PPC trend is one of the few leading indicators of schedule and budget performance on a project. Most schedule and budget tracking systems are actually lagging indicators. When the budget gets produced, it tells you how the team was performing 3 months ago. It doesn't tell you how you're performing that day. And PPC is one of the only ones that tells me how my team is performing that day. And if my PPC is dropping, I know 1-2 months out, my schedule is going to start to take a hit. It's actually taking a hit that day, but it's going to show up in the dashboards later. So all of this to say, we got to aggregate the data and make it really visible. Another lean concept, make it visible, put it out there. There's no secrets. When I put out a project RFP, I will usually include my owner budget with the contingency. Mm-hmm. Here's my budget. This is how much I've got. I'm not tricking you. This is what I have to build the project. And I'm looking for a team that wants to help me build my project within that budget. I'm not looking for a team that wants to give me a 20-page report on why my budget is wrong and I need more money. The
budget's always wrong. The budget could always be wrong but that's a way of building culture and transparency. The owner giving that information freely to say, this is what we have. This is the bucket of money I have to design this building. That's it. So let's figure out how we can drive the cost in a better, more efficient way together, not as adversaries.
So if you compare this model and that dashboard, you can stay on this slide.
Oh, you want to go back?
No, that's good.
Okay.
Just putting the cost and the schedule information up where everyone on the team can see it is radically different than a traditional design, bid, build model where trades come in. It's like, I got my one piece, I'm going to do my one thing and I'm out. And I'd say a lot of that is on us as the leadership of the project, that we are allowing people to not participate in the success of the overall project. We're allowing them to not collaborate. And by making this public, you say to people like, this is a team sport. Everybody needs to get in here and you impact everyone else.
One of the culture drivers that we've really pushed is the idea of profit. Now, I know that we're not motivated by profit. I'm hoping that my trade partners, my contractors are not motivated by profit, but I will say, especially in our IFOA contracts, we're saying right in the contract, I want everyone to make a profit when they leave this project. That way, at least what I'm putting out there is I want these companies to be successful, because if they're not, then James and I are not going to get good project deliveries. We're not going to get the quality and product that we want. We're going to get junk because people had to cut corners because we beat them up on their first price. And I just don't understand that mindset really as we move forward, and we want quality projects. Be transparent, be open about the concept of it, and then we don't want to beat people up as they walk in the front door. That's never really going to make it, help us make any difference in this business. So we got a question if you want to do that before this, or do you want to take the question after we go through the slide?
We can. So the question is, how have collaboration goals and KPIs shifted or pivoted during COVID? So for me, they haven't actually shifted that much. Obviously, the way we're making commitments and the way we're sharing information has changed. It's gone much more virtual. But people are still doing pull plans. People are still doing weekly work plans. We're still tracking PPC. So I wouldn't say that the KPIs have shifted that much, but obviously the means and methods have changed.
Yeah, I think for us, really, what I've noticed is we've had to, if I go back to my lean training and the core values, the 6 tenets of lean, and the middle one is that respect for people concept. That has really there's been a lot of emphasis put on that in the last year. And yes, we still track PPC. We're tracking how long it takes for us to get an RFI responded to. We're tracking how many RFI responses are, how many RFIs come in already with a response included as a suggestion. I think that's a fantastic way to collaborate. I think the difficulty has been, like we were talking about before this presentation, about folks that are remote that can't be on site to walk through a project space. That is difficult. How can we take like Matterport scans and things like that and actually utilize that technology in a positive way for us? So we've been working on that. We've been working on this idea. We actually were able to kind of pause for a little bit, not pause really, but just start to really think about, are the things that we're doing for our clients how valuable are they? And how can we drive a better value proposition? How can we take the best practices from around the industry and bring them forward? And we've set up cluster groups within our collaborative partners to do this work kind of on our own to help our clients and help our clients get a better end product. We've been able to do that during this time because we're all sitting in our offices rather than traveling to a job site. So there's been some benefits to that, but we're keeping KPIs the same way we always would. And the guys and the men and women are out there doing Last Planner. They just have they just have a mask on and they're safe. And we haven't, knock on wood, had any outbreaks on our project sites. We haven't even slowed down during COVID on our construction sites in Chicago for our client. The train has been moving, barreling forward, which has been fantastic because construction is not a work from home type job. Can't do that, So.
All right, so we're going to come into the close here. So if you have any, here's kind of the cheesy sales pitch for you. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and submit them. And so we'll have a couple of minutes for questions. So this is the corollary to an earlier slide or an earlier concept that basically says performance is actually pretty terrible, but the owners aren't paying attention. And I say it's terrible for the owners. It's not terrible for the contractors, architects. You're doing what you're getting hired to do, and you're living within the rules that are set up by the owner. Obviously, great buildings are getting built. What I mean by performance is terrible, I had this conversation with my team. It was, they said, well, we deliver great projects. And then kind of say, well, do you realize pretty much every single project I have to go and get a budget augmentation for? Every single project when we go to bid, the bid comes back higher than we were carrying for construction. It was higher than our estimator said they thought it was going to cost. All of our projects finish later than we thought. And some of this is we got the wrong budgets and we got the wrong schedules for how, we're overly optimistic. But a lot of it is just that there's a lot of unresolved issues that we try to figure out in the field, and they create cost and schedule overruns. So that we might not make money is a point to the putting profit at risk, creating a truly aligned business outcome where the whole project has to go well for everyone to make money. So if the owner's paying attention and the owner sets up a different business scenario for the design and construction team, everything changes with one big asterisk, which hopefully came through in this. The owner has to be deeply involved. So too many projects or too many owners I see, they say, I want everyone to collaborate. I want everyone to be transparent. I want everyone to drop their guard. I want everyone to put their profit at risk, but I don't want to do anything different. I don't want to participate. I don't want to make decisions. I don't want to share my budget. I don't want to be held accountable. I just tell you, it's not going to work. The team will take you as the example, and they'll go back and they'll act however you act. So the owner's got to be committed. The owner's got to be open and transparent. The owner's got to lead the change. Back to what we said in the beginning, even the way you procure the job, you're signaling to the teams how you want to play the game. So let's go to the last slide. So just some questions to leave you with, and then we'll answer some of the questions coming in. So do you have to have an IFOA? So this is, do you need to do the full profit at risk to do an IPD project? And I'll just let people think about that one, actually. I have an opinion, but you think about your own opinion. How do we guard against silos during construction? This is one of the biggest issues. When we retreat to our silos and our contracts is when projects fall apart. And there's that one good joke that buildings leak at the intersection of contracts. Projects fall apart at the intersection of contracts. And what role does the owner play during construction? How are you? There's another quote I like. I don't know who it came from that said, all project delivery, all projects are an outcome of the system, right? All projects are perfectly aligned for the results that they get. So whatever results you get is directly driven by the way you set it up and the way you administered it. So if you don't like what you're getting, I'd suggest looking at how you get there and maybe changing a thing or two. And I'll get
try small changes, Don't even try anything big. Just try something. Just start small if you have to,
So there's one. So I'd say we'll conclude our presentation, our canned remarks there. Sorry if that's too preachy. I've been accused of that, but you're my brother.
I think what people see from both of us is that we really are passionate about this, and I think we got to try to make differences that we can in this business. we're willing to collaborate, we're willing to open up and have these conversations with people because it's important. And so, we could talk about this for hours. We probably will or can or have. You can see by our timing on this thing. This is something that is, like you said, a passion project. We both have really, driven this for a long time about the idea of just being better owner partners with the rest of the team. And I think that's just a huge important message that can't be talked about enough. I think we have a question from Enrique about the idea of why don't we see owners try to make sure that the design team knows the construction team, bring everyone together at every phase of the project. And I think that, we try to do it as much as we can. We work with the same partners over and over again. It's like a repeat thing. We've had huge project success when we can actually take the same tradespeople from one project to the next. So not just the companies, not just the project managers, but the men and women doing the work out in the field are moving from one project to the next. We found great savings doing that, but it's very difficult to lock that in because you have to have that continual program of projects in order to do it. But once they learn the behaviors and know what you're expecting, man, it just clicks. It's like beautiful. So, I think more owners should do that. I think they're afraid to do that because of this early conversation we had about cost. How do I know I'm getting the best cost, right? Where's the competition? If I'm not getting 3 competitive bids, how do I know? Well, we can get competitive bids in a full IPD, IFOA world. We can go get competitive pricing if you want. And on the same token, it's all open book. We see everything. So what are we afraid of by having that team come in and collaborate early and setting a challenge? The profit sharing thing I talked about yesterday in the IFOA conversation had to do with the idea of sharing profit and adding more profit to your bottom line. And some people have a problem with that too. But if we're putting our profit at risk, we should also be able to share in some of the savings if the team gets it. And we can set that incentive threshold to be really tough to get. Like you said, James, if you're setting your E&P at the end of construction documents, there is no shared savings. We just go. We collaborated all the way through. But if we can set our E&P early enough and we find some shared savings up to a point, we should be able to partake in that as a group because we did a good job for the client. So again, I think reach out to us. We're open to this conversation really for as much time as we can give to having it. So really appreciate the time and the audience today. It was really good.
Yeah, I just echo that and say, if you're still here, thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Happy Friday.
Yeah. They stuck it out for 45 whole minutes with us. So brave souls, man. Brave souls.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.